Hello, everyone. Terry Earthwind Healer here. Terry Earthwind Nichols at Evolutionary Healer TV, doing an interview with a master practitioner and dear for long time, dear friend, Julie Jakopic. And welcome, Julie. I am so glad that you hopped on one of these.
I'm glad to be invited. It's you've got really powerful material, so I'm happy to visit with you.
Yeah. We were just before we came on, we were reviewing how long we've known each other. 2012, forever for us. We were a brand new company. Julie was just getting ready to launch, and she's going to speak about it a little bit here. Donate, Wait, Create. Very cool annual program she puts on in DC area.
Yep.
And so I'll let you talk about that in a little bit. So yeah, it's just an amazing once we've known each other for so long. It's like, okay, I've known Julie forever, so it's no big deal, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right. It was funny to go back and try to track it all down. You've got much better data than I do.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, tell us a little bit about I Lead Strategies is your company.
I Lead Strategies is my company, and when we met, I was sort of mid-launching, I think, in some ways. And essentially what we do is help organizations build resilient organizations. So we work with leaders to make sure that their organizations are able to adapt to change in the environment, whether that's money or media or regulation, and to really be strong organizations. I come out of the health and human service field, and one of my perspectives is that if you've got great programs but the organization isn't structurally sound, they fall apart. So most of my focus is helping leaders lead and lead those organizations well. And the folks I've worked with go from elected officials and appointees to nonprofit leaders to a few tech leaders and community and corporate leaders. And one of the things that I think is true across all of them is that we all have stuff that gets in our way. And it's very hard to do anything about that as yourself because you're too close to it. And so finding tools and thinking about ways to get outside yourself or have someone help you get outside yourself to move forward is really helpful. One of the things you alluded to is I do this annual conference for women leaders called Donate, Wait, Create It. We do it over the MLK weekend in January. And you were actually there at the first one. We're now on year 7. And one of the things that I discovered in that first time was how critical it is to find peers that can help us process things. And that proximity to leadership is usually how that happens, except that most senior leaders that are women are not on the golf course. They're not hanging out after travel because most of them have other kinds of responsibilities, either in the community or as in family. And so to create 3 days where they get a chance to dream big, figure out how they're going to get there, and talk to each other is pretty critical. And it was one of those things I learned that first time that it was an unintended consequence, but I think a critical one. And I think in any given year, about a third of our participants are people who've been there before. So clearly they value that sense of community.
Sweet. Well, it's a great conference. I Lead Strategies, Julia Jakopic's on Facebook, obviously, too. Check it out for those of you that resonated with what Julie was just saying. And this is a master, Julie is a master practitioner. I'll let you just kind of map through how Julie Jakopic met on top of Yosemite with us. And these years later, here you are, a master practitioner.
I remember a few things about that weekend in Yosemite. Like, it was 80 degrees when we arrived and snowing on the day I could have gone outside and played, but had no snow clothes. And I think I was drawn in part because our logos are similar. We have these spirals. And got to know you all. I live in outside Washington, D.C. Most of the folks I work with are pretty left brain. If they have any sort of comfort with alternative modalities, they're pretty in the closet about it. I tend to crosswalk worlds as a person, so was drawn to what you were doing. It took me a while to actually have a CR because I had a feeling there was something I was supposed to work on, and I didn't know what it was. In retrospect, it probably was obvious. I used to be missing a year of my life. Fourth grade was missing, and I knew it was missing because there were things that happened in my family that would have been critical to me to understand, but I didn't remember them. So other people told me about them, but I didn't remember. And as a small business person whose father was also an entrepreneur, and those things had to do with my father's depression that I was somehow unaware of, at least in terms of real personal knowledge. Working through that had a lot to do with sort of getting out of my own way as a business person, right? Understanding what happened to him helped me understand what happened to me, and get out of my way. So I went through this process with you, and I think at the time I thought it was quite magical. Truth is, it's not magic. It's actually very concrete and not at all otherworldly. As a participant, it felt that way. And I think many of the folks that I've done CRs with also would say that. But in truth, it's a very structured, concrete, sensory interview process that is not at all particularly emotional, not at all particularly abstract or, for lack of a better word, woo-woo, but is really quite, unearths quite a lot of concrete knowledge that we cut ourselves off from. So if I think about my own experience and then those I've done it with, inevitably we find something that somebody didn't remember or didn't associate with where they are now. And that realization sometimes is powerful and might knock you off your center for a second. But I think in the long run opens people up to healing. Like if you don't address the stuff you're not seeing, you can't move through it.
Right. And it took a while for you to go ahead and do that. We knew each other a couple of years. And then at one point it was like, okay, it's time. And then you got psyched. You were, I think you were in the very next CR Practitioner class, which was one of the first 2 or 3. I
think it was like it wasn't the next one, but the one after that probably. Yeah, because truth in advertising. I was 50 something and I was missing the year of being 9, and had obviously been missing it for quite a while. So getting, fourth grade back, and I will tell you that I don't remember a ton. I do remember the triggering incident. I remember more about what happened that year. It's not like I got 365 days of memories back. But I understood, and I think that understanding is a big part of what drives the healing.
Right. So it was, we got it through out as a practitioner, got out there doing that thing and continued to run into each other regularly, which is fabulous. Came to your event the following year was amazing. I got to speak at that event. It was really a pleasure. And then there came a time where I got sick and I wasn't sure where this was going to go, and as the creator. So I asked Julie and a few other superstars, how about becoming a master practitioner at this so you can teach other people? And really, I'll give you a chance to deep dive into my psyche, how I came up with this and where I go, what drives me. And for all 5 of you that went through it, you all triggered again, and I did too in the training. It was amazing. What a deep connection with all of you, and we've kept that now for 5 years, going on 5 years now. How does that reflect on you?
Well, it's good to see you healthy. I think we start there, and I think at the end of the day, as somebody who coaches others, it's my responsibility to make sure I'm in good shape. So, being in a space where on the one hand you do get triggered, because guess what? It's sort of like a doctor and a broken leg. At the end of the day, while they may understand what's going on, it doesn't mean it doesn't hurt. Right. similarly, it gave us others who understood what was going on for us. And the process is sufficiently powerful when you're working with someone else that I think as a training program, having other peers who are watching people discover things and helping that person manage their process around those discoveries was really helpful. Because inevitably, those of people who choose to do this are carrying something. And, one of the underlying principles of all of the work, Terry, that you've made really clear is a lot of this stuff is really ancient in our lives and is pre-language or early language. And I think, anybody watching this can think of the thing they believe is true about themselves that stopped being true 20 years ago. And whether that's, it's interesting. I live in a community that's trying to decide if it's going to have 2 high schools. And the current thinking is of separating different kinds of kids across 2 high schools instead of having both schools be able to serve all the needs of all the kids. So one idea is the STEM school versus the creative school. One is sort of the IB academically super driven versus everybody else. You can probably tell I really don't think they should be doing either of these. And part of it is I write every week. I speak and perform. I mean, speaking is performing. That's a lot of what I love to do and do. In the last couple of years, I'm a juried artist and a juried photographer, and I would actually describe myself as a type A creative. I grew up thinking I wasn't good at anything creative. I was a math science brain. And that wasn't a terrible thing.
No.
But it isn't what brings me joy. And I really did believe for years and years that I couldn't write. And yet once I've started writing, I can write. Now, do I always love it? No. Would I rather hang out on a beach? Probably. But I don't write badly. And I never did, and I didn't know it. And I think, because some, 6-year-old, 7-year-old, 8-year-old in my head said, you're good at math, therefore you're not good at this other stuff, and grew up in a school system that said that, I believe those things. So I'm busy trying to have conversations with our leaders here that, if you track kids at 13, they will believe what you do to them. So maybe we shouldn't do things that we know are harmful. And, so most of the folks we've done CRs with, I think for them, somewhere along the way, they believed something that's not true.
Exactly.
With discovering that comes A, adapting to a new reality, and B, the loss, I think there's a loss in there. There's some mourning about, wait a minute, was I wrong for half my life? Right? I mean, which is, no, you believed what you believed then, and now you believe what you believe now, and it's fine. But I think there's a process of adaptation to clearing that's important too, and not unique. And
that's a really
got
good
some
point.
other similarities about us, but I'll let you keep going for a while before I ask.
Well, it's a good point, and we say it about it a lot. In fact, 1 or 2 times of my 100+ CR sessions, I actually introduced the client to herself, the original self. She never knew her original personality. One gentleman, a lifelong victim, suffered from victimization all of his life into his 60s. And I introduced him to this terrific young man, and he's held that. And his world changed immediately. The people that were victimizing him on a day-to-day basis at work stopped completely without conscious thought. All of that energy was, turned off. And it's really amazing and interesting work that we do, for sure.
Well, I think, a lot of the women that I work with, and I work with all kinds of people, but I do this conference for women, and I think women have this not enough thing. We're not enough. And I, was very much part of the story that we unearthed, where I tried to solve a family problem. I was all of 8.5 probably, and, failed because I was 8.5. Right. Or by my measure failed because it didn't make everything magically better. On the other hand, what I did stop the trauma that was happening to somebody else. And a lot of it became sort of recasting myself as the superhero, right? That actually I had been far more successful than I understood myself to be at 8. And I definitely think that influences the degree to which I question when I sort of like, am I good enough for this? Yeah, actually, as good as anybody else. Yeah, actually, I'm fine. And I think that sort of recasting thing happens to anybody who's done this.
Well, fabulous. Any final thoughts?
I know we're doing this around the whole issue of suicide and the whole set of issues around really the ways in which people judge themselves, which is a piece of that. I wonder how many of us masters have a history related to, that has a suicide connection. That actually is what I was going to ask you, because I suspect all of us do. I suspect it's not just you and me. I suspect that the majority of the cadre of us probably have a connection.
Family member, one way or another. Yeah, close friend or relative.
Yeah. My father did not kill himself at the time that we unearthed, but he did 4 years later. And, that's clearly a piece of the drive to make sure that we take this work to people who are at risk. A lot of lives wasted. And so to the extent that we can help people get out of themselves enough, and maybe perhaps see themselves in the best light that the rest of us see them, is a useful and critical skill.
Absolutely. And what it leaves behind, 2 in 5 survivors of someone who commits are likely to end their life unnaturally. That's the real tragedy too,
Yeah, I have a real frustration with the research though, because what the research does is tell us what goes wrong. What the research doesn't tell us is what happened for the 3 out of 5 that don't.
Right.
It took me a long time to understand that I'm actually the unicorn. But, we're not that uncommon. And it's funny, for a while I had a long list of folks who were adult survivors of a parent's suicide, in part because so much of the work is around teenagers. And around vets, although in the vet community, if you weren't a vet and your father wasn't a vet, maybe you don't get it. I'm sorry. The unnatural death of a parent is the unnatural death of a parent. And I think there's a lot of research to be done around some of those things. But yeah, if it also tells you, so back to the enough thing, when somebody leaves abruptly by their own choice, whether that means they pack their bags or they die by their own choice, that's a very rejecting thing for a kid. And I would imagine that most of us who've experienced those things as children, because children are self-centered to start with, believe it had something to do with us. So those statistics don't surprise me. I just wish we knew more about what happens to make sure that it doesn't follow that way.
Right on. Fabulous to see you again, always, my dear friend.
You too. Thanks for the work you do. We should, end this on the truth is that we are learning, and we are learning ways to help that are not tons of meds that only work sometimes, and hours and hours and hours of conversation that may not actually lead to healing.
Absolutely. Well, that's it for today, and our master practitioner, Julie Jakopic, and love you as always.
Oh, absolutely. Say hi to Linda.
I will.